Thank you very much, Bill. I'm always amazed at the grace that has come through the founders of this brotherhood. It's always, when I take some time to just sit down and think about it, I'm stunned once again at what the great it has wrought through the earthen vessels that we all are. But it has done fantastic things through Bill and Rich and all the early founders. And you all know that story, so I don't need to retell it. Let me just sketch what I have promised for you this afternoon, so that we can remotely stay in the zip code of what we promised you. It says, in this session we will address together the issue of the central foundational role of the deep study and living practice of spiritual wisdom in the life and mission of the MKP elder. Without this life after 55, the aging process becomes a fertile incubator for resignation, depression, despair, and increasing narcissism. And so this whole bunch, everybody in this room could give this presentation, and so I'm very aware of who I'm talking to. And so that's going to make a difference in the way that I proceed. The invitation to me to come here has been a big, as I said to you, various of you in many ways, has been incredible, made an incredible impact on me. And I'm not going to make this about me, but I just want to say thank you again for this opportunity to be with you. And basically, I really needed to come out here and hang out with you and soak up some male energy, because I'm surrounded by so much energy most of the time that it doesn't really like men. And so you know, your invitation to come and speak was wonderful. So now I get to soak up all of your energy, and I'm greedy. So I just want you to know I'm greedily soaking it up. Let me get down to business here. Well, now what I'm supposed to do is, everybody's attention. This is the worst slot of the day. I teach seminars from 2 to 5 in the afternoon. And there's nothing harder than trying to get people to maintain, not go to sleep and yawn in my face, and we are all no exception. We've had much. We've been working very hard. So I have empathy for the task of sitting and listening to somebody talk at you. And I know you've got a limit of what you'll put up with. So yes.
Robert, I was told that a professor is a person who talks in other people's sleep.
That's exactly right. Did you hear that? Professor talks in other people's sleep. That's precisely true in this hour. If this was 9 a.m., that might not be the case, but it's 3 o'clock. So I have, shall we say, lowered my expectations a little bit about how much you're going to listen. But here's the thing I have to say about that. I want to screw with you a little bit here. There are 3 books that are on their way out that are very detailed in what I have to say about all this stuff. So what I have to say about all this stuff is on the public record and now can be downloaded all over the world. So I'm not going to try to recapitulate all that stuff. I know you're happy about that. But I do want to speak to, I want us to sit. Let's do a little exercise. I don't know how much work you've done with other archetypes like the Senex and the Puer. How many of you have know anything about the Senex and the Puer? Okay, not very many. Let me just give you the very short version. The Cynics is the old man archetype. It's portrayed in Scrooge and the Christmas Carol. It's tired, cynical, depressed, bah humbug, and that sort of thing. So when a man gets 50 years old, that archetype, according to Jung, gets powerfully constellated. But it's always in your psyche. On that archetype is one end of a continuum. Let's see if I've got my pen. I don't know. But anyway, on this end is the Cynics, the old man in your personality. Every person's got it. On the other end is the puer, the eternal boy. I sometimes call it the petulant puer. Because in a man over 50, the puer part tends to get very petulant. And that is to say, its capacity for attending to old farts talking is quite limited. So I want to appeal. So I want to make a direct appeal to you, mano y mano, and that is to say, I would like to speak to that part of you that's the petulant puer, and I would like you to ask that part of you that's the petulant puer and would just really like me to shut the fuck up. I would like to ask you to ask him to sit down. I'm serious. Because if you don't ask him to sit down, he will ensure that you won't get anything out of the next hour. And so the Cynics in you is also a challenge because the old man thinks he knows it all. He's heard it all before. And so he would rather me sit down and shut up. So it's important in a situation like this, at a conference like this, after we've already been working, it's important to be really conscious about how difficult it is to listen to anything. And I'm with you on that. So with that said, I just want to request that you try to maintain consciousness for a little while, and then I'm just going to lay out some stuff, and then we're going to open it up and we're going to dialogue, because you'll probably be able to stay awake longer if we do that, right? Okay. So basically, I want to follow up on what we were talking about last night. Now, if I were teaching you a seminar, there are a lot of things I want to go over. And one day I might even get asked to do that. I'm not going to hold my breath, but I might be asked to do that. But if I was, this is not something that I do just for men or just for people in men's conferences. I do this in my work in general. So what I'm talking to you about, anybody I'm consulting with at a high level, I do this. So this is not picking you out and singling you out. This is what I do. So what I would do if I were working with you, if I were consulting with you, I would start by trying to get an assessment of the state of your spiritual life. I mean, I do that with everybody I work with, whether they're atheists or clergy or CEOs. I would start with an assessment of the state of your spiritual life. Toward what end? What I am about now and until I die is helping leaders, men and women, from all walks of life. I consult with governments. I consult with a variety of large companies. And I have more fun now consulting than I ever have in my life. Because I'm not constrained under that psychoanalytic contract anymore. So I work with people as they need to be worked with. So I'm having a lot of fun. But if I were working with you, I would do an assessment of your personality, which I call a structural diagnosis. And what I would do is I would do what a lot of you are already doing in teaching. You're teaching a lot of this, so I don't have to start from 101. I would start by looking at how the archetypal energies in your personality are organized and configured. That has huge importance for whether or not your spiritual practice is optimal or not. Because what I'm interested in is leaders being optimized in their capacity to function effectively. And I'm concerned that we said for MKP elders, but I would just like to say, when I'm talking to in this, whoever hears this audio tape, I keep saying audio tape, you can tell how old I am. But whoever hears this, I'm talking to any leader who is serious about trying to optimize what they're doing in their leadership. So I'd first do that structural assessment to try to figure out how you're, let's put it this way. How are the opposites functioning in your personality? All healing traditions focus on trying to balance the opposites. So I would be trying to help you think about, well, what's the unique configuration of my personality? Why? Because spirituality, whether it's any form of yoga, whether it's Hindu yoga, Buddhist yoga, Christian yoga, any serious spiritual tradition is paying attention to the question of balancing opposites. I won't give you the bibliography on that now, but it does exist, and I know you don't want to hear it. But the point of it is that the task in advancing the optimal function of your spiritual life is to get clear about how the opposites are configured in your personality. This is why Jung was so interested in alchemy, because alchemy is a system of trying to figure out what the opposites are and how to bring them together so there will be a radical transformation, what today we would call a quantum change. So we're in the realm of quantum mechanics now. And any contemporary spirituality that is not thinking in terms of quantum mechanics is way behind. It's not that they're not practicing things which actually reflect quantum mechanics, because you can have a very sophisticated practice that you don't know reflects quantum mechanics. So I'm not saying that if you're an effective elder and you don't have all the scientific language, I'm not saying you're not doing a fantastic job. What I am saying is you're operating according to the principles of quantum mechanics, whether you're aware of it or not. And that is a good thing. Why is that? It's because we know more now about how these opposites relate. And we know more now about the possibility of what happens. And we're talking about the shift. This whole week, some wisdom has channeled into this body, this conference this week. And this wisdom is a capital W, because what it has done, without anybody really planning it, in that sense, what has happened is that the great it, has manifested all kinds of things, and that's a sign that you men are in a flow, that we have been experiencing a flow together, that no one of us can claim that we did that. That's the magic and the mystery of being in the flow. So I don't know. I would ask. I don't ask for a show of hands of people who have experienced the flow, but I suspect practically everyone here has had an experience of that so far. So the second thing I would like to point out is I would be interested in helping you understand the way the play of opposites is working in your personality. And when I say understand that, I mean that seriously. Sometimes folks get the idea that the heart and the mind are in opposition. And in some personalities, they are. But hopefully, we will be able to bridge the heart and the mind in this brotherhood. Many of you are teaching courses on bridging the heart and the mind. Third thing I would say is once we have that kind of understanding, we ask the question, how well is the energy of the great self, or how well is the energy of the archetypal self? How well is the energy of the it flowing in your personality? So in other words, I would be trying to pay attention to how creativity with a capital C is in you. You are never separated from it. Creativity with a capital C flows in your body. You're plugged in to what Erwin Maslow calls the quantum field, the Akasha field. That is to say, you're plugged into incredible energy and knowledge. So I want us to just get clear about that. There's not a man here that is not directly plugged into the energies and wisdom of the great id. Just take a moment and think about that. There's not anyone here who's cut off from that. So, we were saying thou art that, namaste, last night. Well, we need to understand how literally true that is. That is, all men here are embodiments of divine energy right now and are vessels of divine energy right now. So what is the task of the elder? The task of the elder, in my view, I have high expectations, shamelessly, because in all spiritual traditions, when we step up and say, I'm going to be an elder, now that's not an honorific position. Like on some boards, they make people on board of directors, they make them honorary board members. I don't like that practice. I think it's a meaningless practice. And so the deal is, I think all of us have signed on to do what we can to optimize our effectiveness by opening as completely as possible to the great self within. Now, if you just think about that, that's enough for the afternoon if you really think about it. So there's the thing of acknowledging that it is already in you. You don't have to find it. You don't have to create it. You don't have to, like we were saying last night, if you really wake up spiritually, there's nothing you have to do. The whole idea is, according to Jesus, Gautama Buddha, and list as long as my arm of the great spiritual masters, they all are very clear that it's not about stuff you have to do. It's about stuff you've heard of Wu Wei, I'm assuming. How many people have heard of Wu Wei? Okay, that is the Taoist term for not doing. And your spiritual level of development is reflected in how much you still think you have to be anxiously doing. Because, now hold this now, tension. You talk about a paradox. I'm just talking about dynamic tensions. It would be very easy with that philosophy to get passive if you misunderstood it. This is not about being passive. So if you get to that level of spiritually not doing, it doesn't mean you're passive. It doesn't mean you're going to be less effective. It doesn't mean you're withdrawn at all. It simply means that you're not trying to transform the world all by yourself, out of your ego, out of your special talents. Just think about that a minute. So not doing, the way to get to not doing is just realizing that you don't have to do this by yourself. Think about what you've experienced together as brothers. We don't have to do anything in this brotherhood by ourselves. And the more we're into a fantasy that we're going to do it by ourselves, the more we get in the way of our effective functioning. Does that compute? Anybody with me on that? Okay. All right. So our goal really, it's sort of like Mission Impossible, you know. Your task, should you choose to accept it, my shadow does not think it's Tom Cruise. So, but anyway, your task, should you decide to accept it, is to believe and have faith that this is already working in you. You don't have to make it happen. You don't have to figure out a strategy of making it happen. Although, look, I love strategy and tactics. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about being quietist and a passive person who fiddles while Rome burns. I'm not proposing that. I love the beauty of effectiveness, friends. I love the beauty, the elegance of effective functioning. And you do too, because you know it when you see it in your gut. Whenever any of your brothers do well, nobody has to tell you they did well, right? Because you know it in your gut immediately, because you get this wonderful rush when you observe effectiveness. And that's true everywhere. That's part of being a human being, because we admire effectiveness. We scan for it like that child I was talking about last night scans for an adult that's interested. So we need to see effectiveness. Does that have anything to do with being an elder, you think? Think about that. Think about all these younger men that are longing for elders to be radiant with effectiveness. Does anybody get what I mean? Raise your hand if you get what I mean. Okay. I'll guarantee you that's true. Younger men are hungry to have men over 50 who they can legitimately admire. And you are the guys who have been chosen to be those men. Now, I'm not saying who chose you. You know how you got chosen. And if you don't, you can think about it a little bit and you will know how you got chosen. But the fact is, every man in this room has been chosen to be one of those men who carries the radiance of effectiveness for the younger men of our brotherhood. And there's some wonderful things going on in the MKP now, which we're going to be making sure all of you are aware of before the end of the week. I mean, wonderful things. I came here ready to bitch at the MKP in my fantasies because I was not informed. And now I have been actually learning what's actually been going on with the MKP. And I am impressed. And I am deeply satisfied. And I have a lot of joy in my heart right now for what is actually already happening. Not going to happen, but what is now already actually happening in the MKP. So there's a lot of good news. And our task, to make this very simple, our task is to relax into the joy of realization. See if you can wake up to engage that. Because the last 25 years is over. We need to, I came here, I was going to share with you my grief about the last 25 years in the men's movement. And I will do that sometime when it's more appropriate. Because I carry a lot of grief about what might have been had I been more effective. What might have been, I sent out a letter to the men's movement leaders in which I just shared my lament about my ineffectiveness of leadership. Some of you probably saw that. I'm not whining, I'm simply stating the truth. And I'm not the only special boy who has contributed to the difficulties that our brotherhood has had. So I'm just saying that we've got to let the past go. We have to grieve the past. Spiritually speaking, in terms of our challenges as a brotherhood, I think we have a lot. This is an important, it's not a cul-de-sac, it's an important thing for us to talk about. I think we have a mission that we need to get clearer about in terms of our ritual leadership worldwide. And that mission is we need to help have grief events all over the world, which will be MKP-led, facilitated, not solely MKP, but grieve-ins. My friend Forrest Craver, who is has a long-term dear friend of mine who would wish to be with us this weekend. Forrest has long had a dream that I honor as a great dream. And he has had a dream that one day the MKP would be ritual leaders that would gather at Gettysburg. And that the MKP, now listen to this dream, it's a big dream. And when I'm talking about Gettysburg, I want you to think about Wounded Knee. And I want you to think about all of the other genocides in our nation's history. And then I also want you to think about all the other genocides around the world, in Australia and other places, where there is an untold, horrible shadow story that is the true story of what has happened. What's going on in the world right now and what's going to keep the shift from occurring adequately is ungrieved grief, because it is a rule in terms of transformation. You and I and all of us know that personally. If we're carrying a lot of serious ungrieved grief, we are going to be locked up inside. We are going to be so spiritually and emotionally constipated that we're not going to be able to let things go that need to be let go. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Okay. Now it's wonderful that we do that work personally. It's wonderful that we do this work to help men do their grief work. But this is the time, in this next 25 years, our challenge as spiritual leaders and as ritual leaders is to help do public ritual leadership for all of the tragedies that have not been grieved by our nation or other nations. I want you to just take a moment to think of a few of those tragedies. Just take a moment. All of you know a lot. And just take a moment. This is a big dream that Forrest Craver has had. And I promised Forrest that I would refer to this as a part of my communication to this brotherhood. He would have given anything to have been with us. Yes.
The WAG in 2013 is going to be held in Australia, in Brisbane, and that is the theme. We are having the Aboriginal people, we're having the Maoris, we're having the Zulus from South Africa, and the theme is reconciliation to your country, to your nation, to your nation, to your tribe, to your family, and to yourself. And we're going to do public grieving. That's one of the things that we're going to do. It's amazing.
This man is already embodying the vision that Forrest saw so long ago. Forrest saw that vision back in, I forget what year it was, when we were first doing this. It was in the probably late 80s, early 90s. But anyway, that vision is now going to begin to be realized through your leadership and your work. And we should be very grateful to the men of Australia and the men of South Africa and all these other people who are going to be working on these ritual processes. This is not something you and I have to do. We simply need to put it all on the screen. What's going to happen before the shift is really going to be able to occur as fully as it needs to occur? We have enormous grieving to do, my friends. To run off into the great ecstatic future without doing the grief work? What is that? Somebody tell me what that would be. Somebody just tell me what that would be. If we were going to just run off and just be brilliant and radiant and wonderful without, somebody tell me. Huh?
Denial.
It's in denial. What else would you say?
Spiritual bypass.
A spiritual bypass.
New age.
It would be New Age. It would be what? Thank you. Thank you. He's using my kind of language there. And I want to thank you very much for that, so I don't feel like I'm the only old guy that's doing that. But here's the deal. I love the contributions of the New Age. Let me be clear about that. I have studied them deeply. I have spent huge amounts of time with the most creative people in the New Age movements, and they have brought brilliant contributions to us. And so I don't want anybody to misunderstand that. They've brought many contributions to us. The only thing is that they don't have the complete package. And part of the lack of the complete package is the capacity to actually look evil face in the face. Straight in the face. Right here. And I like to use the spiritual image of a laser beam. And you need to be able to have the kind of vision that Jesus of Nazareth had. Because when Jesus of Nazareth was in the world with us, he never turned his face away from any evil. He had what it took to look at the evil. Since Jesus, I think probably only Sigmund Freud had that kind of ruthless capacity to look at evil in the face and not try to clean it up with a little cosmetology. And since Freud, psychology spent a lot of time cleaning it up and not wanting to look at the horror of the human psyche. That's just a little aside. But so I'm getting to the end of my formal comments here. I'm just going to say that before we have does everybody know what the word apotheosis means?
No.
Can somebody say what it means? Apotheosis?
Highest moment. Highest moment.
Kind of a revelatory
Appearance of God.
conversation.
Thank you. Your apotheosis, you see, at the heart of most really deep spiritual traditions, if not all of them, there is this esoteric teaching, which should no longer be esoteric in my view. It's now an open secret. Since Rumi, it's an open secret. And that secret is God dwells in you, and your job is to be a welcomer to the divine presence. And your job is to get to the point where you are not having a problem about dwelling in the divine presence. That's true in Buddhism, that's true in Hinduism, that's true in Native American religions, it's true in indigenous religions around the world. The only cultures that have had the kind of lobotomy with regard to the connection to the sacred has been Western cultures. You understand that? And that's why the indigenous peoples of the world have always had terrible confusion about us. Right? So they weren't wrong to be confused about us. But that doesn't have to continue. In fact, it's not going to continue very long. In fact, I'm happy to tell you men before I shut my formal comments here, I am happy and joyful to tell you that you are not alone. You're not just out here and whistling in the graveyard. There is a global movement now, a huge global movement toward consciousness, increased consciousness of millions upon millions of people, many of them in their 20s. Many of them in their 20s. And they are using digital communications to facilitate the emergence of a new level of consciousness in ways that we old 19th century people, I won't ask for a show of hands, but I started out in the 19th century. I graduated out in the 20th century, and now I've got a lot of people trying to help me kind of stumble into the 21st century. But the good news is you're not alone. And this shift that everyone is trying to understand more about this week, friends, it's really happening. We're not just in a fantasy about it. I am in connection with a lot of the people that are really in the know about this. And I'm just learning. I'm on a fast-track learning curve about it. But many of you men also are. I know Bill is. And I know a lot of others of you are really in that. And so, good news, it's happening, friends. It's happening as we speak. The old world is dead, and it's rapidly passing away all over the world. And so, we have a joyous occasion. Every man here should have a lot of joy in his heart, because the horror of history is history is turning a corner right now. And I'm just concerned with this man that we seriously grieve the horror of the human past before we fly off into the future. So that's where I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to just open it up and we can dialogue.
What does grieving look like? I mean, if you look at individual grief versus a community of men, what does that look like when a community of men are grieving or individual?
I'm happy to say that in the men's movement, Doug Von Koss and I have been present at amazing sessions of grief led by Malidoma Some. Many of you in this room have led by Michael Mead. I'll never forget the conference. I can't remember the date or where we were.
I'll try to help.
You'll try to help me, Doug. But I remember this conference where Robert Bly had the guts to he just had the guts. And we're going to forever be indebted to him. And we need to tell the stories of our history, because those stories young men don't know those stories, and they ought to know those stories, because he had the guts. And we'd have a lot of Vietnam vets, but there wasn't a bamboo bridge then. And these Vietnam vets would be there, and Robert and Michael and Doug and James Hillman and Miguel Rivera. I want to lift up their names, all their names, because we're indebted to all of them. We would just get in a room with twice as many men, and then a man would be invited to stand up and say what's on his heart. We did a lot of that. Just meeting. We didn't have, in fact, I think we have too many presenters at conferences now, because in those days, there would just be a vessel created by Doug and the team, and then the focus would be on the men standing and then sharing from their heart. And then when a theme came up, like grieving the terrors, the horrors of Vietnam, the men would just sit there and they would begin to weep. And they would just, listen, you haven't ever experienced anything unless you sat in a room with 200 men, 150 to 200 men, who are just sitting there, and they know what they're grieving about. And they weep. I'll tell you what it looks like. They sit and they weep, and they weep, and they weep, and they moan, and they cry, and they hold each other, and they weep, and they weep, and they weep. And just a word, one last word about Gettysburg. If we were to even get remotely close to the grief that has never been grieved about slavery in the United States, about the horrible price paid by both sides in the Civil War, beautiful men on both sides. Walt Whitman, the poet, loved both sides. Walt Whitman wrote poetry. Walt Whitman was working in field hospital. He was holding young men down while their limbs were being sawed off without anesthesia. And Walt Whitman was a male nurse. And he heard their screams. And he stayed with them when the gangrene set in. And he was there while they were dying, screaming. And he held their hands. And so Walt Whitman is the poet who witnessed this horror and was able to write about it. But the whole country has never acknowledged what Walt Whitman saw and what he experienced and what he did. And so this is a part of our task of grieving. I could talk forever about that. Go ahead.
I have a good friend who's an African-American woman. She's a shaman. She works with black men in Milwaukee who are abusers of their female partners. And Jojapa Marie said to me that these men who are the abusers are acting from the wound of slavery. And they're taking it out on the women. And she works with these men, and she has state-funded still from the prison system. These are offenders, some out of prison, some not. She has a residential facility. And she just flat out said that the problems of the black community in Milwaukee are rooted in the failure of the United States to recognize the wound of slavery.
That's universally true. And if you get to know if you really get to know an African American person, and that's not easy for a Caucasian to do, you need to understand there's a lot of layers that you've got to go through to show you're trustworthy before you'll be able to be actually engaged in truth. And I've been there. And the important thing, I mean that's just true. And as long as we have not really, as long as they know that the whites have never engaged that. If I were an African American, I would hate whites so much with an implacable hate. So, go ahead.
Robert, this is much what happened in the Memphis Center
Yeah.
years ago when they had as many black or perhaps more African American brothers than they had white brothers. And some of those white brothers were rather redneckish in their approach and their language, and it just split that center apart, and in my judgment, that center has never recovered.
Could everybody hear what Ed said? Ed was just commenting that the lack of authentic acknowledgement of the devastating effects of slavery and racism in the Memphis MKP Center, that the inability of the whites to really be able to stand in the truth of what slavery has done in this country. He's saying that was tremendously damaging to that center, and that he thinks it has not yet recovered from it. Well, friends, we got a lot of work to do in terms of facilitating grief. Yes, back here, stand up and say your name.
When you were talking about the Vietnam healing thing,
Yeah.
I was at one in Santa Barbara, California
Were you?
in 1990. I had not participated in the war in any way, shape, or form. I was
Right.
blah, 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 blah. And the thing that, you know, obviously the men who went had a grieving, the men who ducked had a grieving, and I had a grieving of my own, and that grieving was, I just sat by and watched it all. You know, I did absolutely nothing. You know, I did not support the people that wanted to stop it. You know, and my sense was that same sense that I got last night, which is we've got this thing going on in New York, we've got it going on all over the country, and what did we do? You know, it happened in the 60s. It happened in the 60s, and we collectively, us, our age, we sat back and eventually ended up in our ticky-tacky boxes again, and just bought the program and let the moral majority stomp all over us, let the silent majority stomp all over us. And now we've got these kids out there again.
Right.
You know, what are we going to do?
Absolutely.
It's a call. It's a time.
It's time. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And that's beautiful, what you're saying. I mean, we don't lack for things to do, right? Huh? I mean, we're blessed. You're elders. That's the blessing that the world has given you now. And I'm sorry. You signed up for it. I didn't get you to sign. I didn't have the pen. Yeah, go ahead.
And last night I spoke of the mountaintop removal and that sort of thing. And when you get down to the human grief part of it, of the industrial complex and what it's done to, I mean, you go to Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia.
Poor people.
And it's just ground them up. It hasn't given them health services.
Right.
You still ride through the communities, see women without teeth that are 35, 40 years old and look like they're 80. And
those are my people.
And we've left them there.
Yeah.
And we just absolutely live off their blood and tears. Every day we turn on a light bulb.
Yeah.
Every day. And we just aren't willing to own that.
Well,
maybe we can. I think we will. Okay. I'm optimistic.
I'm hopeful. Okay.
Bill, I just want to observe that there's a real difference between the young people today and the ones protesting the war in the 60s. The ones in the 60s and 70s, there was tremendous negativity and hostility. My own brother was spat upon and called a baby killer and all that. And I've been in two of these veteran circles, one in Texas and one in Portland. And what was so moving and beautiful and gorgeous was it wasn't merely those of us who had been in wars who spoke of our grief. There were the ones who had protested, those who were in Korea and those who were in Vietnam and so forth. And they revealed what they had been like. And some of these hardened veterans who had been so repressed embraced the protesters who had spit upon them and reviled them. That was incredible.
That's miraculous. That's a Tolkienian miracle. Something that you could not ever predict happening. But it's what, I got another word for you. You know the word catastrophe?
Yeah.
Put EU on the front of it. It means something that happens in a positive way that's so huge, you can't get your mind around it. And a eucatastrophe. And frankly, my friends, we're going to be seeing a lot of eucatastrophe.
Yeah, I want to get on the list in the order, but I protested the Vietnam War, so I did want to respond to that.
Yeah.
So I want to say that I protested against the war because I thought the war was wrong, and I'd never defiled a vet. I wanted to prevent them from going because I thought it was bad for them and bad for the Vietnamese and bad for the world. So not everyone who protested the war. While I'm up here, I want to connect the dots. So we're grieving for the evil that has occurred in the past and for the tremendous suffering that humans have inflicted on other humans and on animals as well. And then you said we need the strength and the courage to look in the eye of evil and look in the face of evil. So my question is, how do you define evil? And tell me more about this looking at evil and speaking truth to power or whatever.
Read my Facing the Dragon book.
All right.
That whole book is about that. I studied the dynamics of evil for 30 years, and what I know about it is in Facing the Dragon. So it's public record. So I won't bother to recapitulate that book. It's out there. It's part of the Dragon trilogy. Yeah.
So, first of all, I thank you for the distinction of the Order of Merit, which is something that I've taken seriously since May 2002.
Okay.
And my life was nothing but a bunch of youth catastrophes.
Wonderful.
During the Vietnam crisis, I was in the Army, top secret clearance, air defense, and I was stationed 23 miles away from Kent State. The morning of Kent State, our group was the first one called up.
Oh.
At 19 years old, I refused to go. And at the end of the day, the war began, 9 wounded, and I went to Fort Knox.
Can you folks hear him?
Wow. And I suffered 3 months in the stockade, given an undesirable discharge, shame on both sides of the track.
Right.
And became a priest in a very esoteric, contemplative order in San Francisco. 22 years in business, and ended up in a huge catastrophe suing American Family Insurance Company and a mid-sized litigation group in Denver.
So it's good that you've experienced it.
But then meeting MKP, I was probably the baddest son of a bitch that ever came into this place.
Well, there are a lot of people that would get the losing contest.
I really need the help of this brotherhood today, because I'm facing 2 substantial projects that are at the heart of what you're talking about today.
Well, you're at the right place to talk to these men.
I went to Wounded Knee, and I've ridden on the rise with the Lakota twice in the middle of winter with 250 people, most of them children that hardly have coats. And so here's, and on the other end, I have another project over here in this vein that just got their freedom here on July the 9th. And that's a whole different thing happening.
Certainly. Well, so you're at the right place, and we appreciate your comment. The deal is, we need to have one person trying to do that, trying to carry all that. That's too much for you to have to carry alone. That's why we need to, as a brotherhood, we need to, as we go forward, we'll be able to make sure that all around the world, these ritualizations occur. So I'm confident of that.
In 2008, we had David Corton, and his book was Empire versus Earth Community. There's more to that. Bill, do you? The Great Turning. And the point in a nutshell of his book was that about 5,000 years ago, man took over completely, pushing the women aside. You yourself talked about India. Remember your talk in 2005. And it's about empires, and whether it's monarchies, oligarchies, democracies, blah, blah, blah. It's always male-driven, controlled, and it's about building empire. And it's my judgment, this has left a huge trail of tears, sometimes unshed, and that's where I plug into your grief. There's 5,000 years of built-up grief. Sometimes it's expressed, sometimes not. And one of our past chairmen, Jim Mitchell, asked me as the elder chair at that time, when men need to do grief work, we elders should be prepared to hold and support that. And I haven't got that done yet. So it weighs heavily on me. And that's what brings me up here. Thank you.
You said that we are not alone in this.
You're not alone.
Can you cite an example?
I'll be happy to put you on to the groups of people that I am in touch with. It's probably not a problem citing an example. It's a problem figuring out which example to cite, because there's so many of them. In December 2012 at Chichen Itza in Mexico, there's going to be a very huge gathering. It's already, do you know what Chichen Itza is? How many people know what Chichen Itza is? Well, if you don't, you need to know, because you may know that I believe that the pyramid at Chichen Itza is a model for the way the human self is actually organized. It's a projected image of what our inner codes are. So it has an esoteric meaning regardless of whatever anybody else wants to put on it as mythical truth. But it has power. It has so much power that all over the world, people are already aware. Look at the internet. Just Google 2012. Just Google 2012. And take an hour. Well, you can't. You're going to you'll never get to the bottom of it. There is so much on there about 2012, and if we are aware of what time we live in, you need to know that. That's why I promised that we'd talk about 2012. So there's this huge thing coming into the world now. You're not in charge of it. I'm not in charge of it. We are not steering, friends. This thing is coming in. And the numbers of people that are likely to watch the events at Chichen Itza, they're going to be televised. The events at Chichen Itza are very significant, and huge preparations are being made for that. And if you get on the internet, you'll see all kinds of organizations of indigenous elders that are a part of that. So you need to know that there are huge groups of people that are organizing to acknowledge the shift in 2012. So
your talk about evil reminded me of a quote that I wanted to share with you, men. And I may mispronounce his name, but Alexander Solinsky, is that his name? Solzhenitsyn. Okay, so maybe some of you have heard this before. If only there were evil men somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. And who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? And I ask you men to think about that as we address these issues.
Well, Solzhenitsyn was witness to some of the greatest evil in history. So he witnessed it, and there's a sense in which Russia never faced the extent of the evil that occurred. 20 million dead. The whole generation of Russian women without men. So I take it that the thing that you would like to warn us about is projecting our shadow onto other people. That's what I heard in that comment. And of course that's true. But let me just make a comment on that. Just because you have evil in your heart that you project on other people doesn't mean that there are not evil men in very high places that are planning horrific things. And if you don't know that, then my sense is that there's a lot of naivete, because the world right now is really in a lot of danger because of very effective people who are trying to strangle things. Yes, go ahead. Somebody else, you're next.
Who asked for example? Yeah. How many men in this room view yourself as a Christian? A bunch. In North Carolina, there was a festival this summer called the Wild Goose. Did anybody hear about that? No. Okay. There's a festival in the UK called Greenbelt. Has anybody heard of that?
Yeah.
All right.
We talked about it at the WAG 2 years ago in London.
Okay. That's been running since 1974. Started with about 1,500 left-tolerant Christians. And now they have 20,000 people show up every year when they have it. It's at a race course in Cheltenham. And it's a mixture of music, art, lectures, and it's Christian, non-Christian. It's just everybody that comes cares. The Wild Goose Festival started in Pittsboro, North Carolina, Shikori Hills. It's about an hour from where I live. And we stumbled. I didn't even know this. We had a poster out. Bottom line is the director of the festival, who's from Ireland. And it's designed to be a recreation of Greenbelt in the UK, bringing it to the US. He was initiated on our May training 1 month before the festival. His publicist was initiated in 1 month before. Somebody saw a poster and they were looking for men's work. Richard Rohr was there. He spoke 3 times. We went out, MKP had a booth. We did it with Woman Within, and it was like a time warp somehow being back in the 60s, which is when I graduated. They wanted to change the world. They want a better world. And all of us old guys that were out there were so touched. There were gay men, there were all kinds of people, and the only thing in common was Christianity is more than the religious right. And there were booths with signs like, "Who would Jesus torture?" And we're going back again. I made a pitch. Some of the people higher up, I think it's an international, national. People came as far away as New Zealand. There were a lot of ministers there. Every time I talked to him, thank you. I was trying to sell him on doing the weekend in North Carolina, and then he'd tell me he was from Pittsburgh or California. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity for MKP, and it's an example of something I didn't even know about. And I think it's there for us to support. Thank you.
Thank you.
June 21, 24 in Pittsboro, North Carolina, right near Raleigh.
He's absolutely right. I happen to be in a place where I get to witness all kinds of amazing creative things now coming. You know, the United Church of Christ now, which is one of the most liberal denominations in the country, maybe in the world. It has a motto that I kind of like. It says, "God is still speaking." God is still speaking. Who was next? Are you next?
I've thought this through for a long time, and if we were talking about 5,000 years of history where things went wrong, and we talked about your experiences about things went wrong, and we asked, what's going on and why? The answer that I have is that we all voluntarily allowed it to happen. And this is the key for me, because we could have all done something different, or we all could have made a choice, voluntarily said no. Now, you said no, I'm not going to Kent State. And there's other men and women who said no. We say, why has the world got to be its way over the last 5,000 years? I voluntarily allowed it to happen.
And you own it, right?
Yep, I hope.
So now that's the kind of honesty that this is called our shadow work, right? So we haven't, for all our talk about shadow work and all the shadow work we've done, which has been good and important, and I'm not depreciating it, but there are more layers of that, friends. There are a lot more layers of shadow work, and it has to do with this kind of thing. And even among those people, like I teach in this very radical school. It's really an incredibly radical place, and I'm honored to be a part of that great faculty. And yet, even in this school, which is taken the lead on LGBTQ issues, which has taken the lead on so many issues around race, and has done so since 1855. It's been a pioneer since 1855. Even there, we are now struggling to have the serious conversation about race that we're talking about here. Now, everybody talks about race, and everybody feels sort of innocent about race, you know. And the ones that don't feel innocent about race, you know, folks kind of get impatient with them. But the truth is, working on this race stain is work we still all need to do. And there have been people in this project that have really been making an effort to bring that forward.
When I was being trained as a breath worker, some of our training was showing us films of men being circumcised. I haven't been able to watch it yet. I've been through at least 4 of those trainings. Most of us share that wound. When I have rebirthed a man who's been circumcised and he goes into that, it's rare to see that kind of rage. It's very rare. We've all got it. It's the roots of our homophobia. It's the roots of our sexual acting out against women. We had an adult male with a razor-sharp knife attack us in our most private place, in our most vulnerable day of our life. And it's something for us all to grieve. And I offer that as something that's we can choose to grieve in our time and when it's right to do it, and feel that reality. We deserve to let that grief out and to support each other as we do it. Many blessings.
I want you to know that Jack Travis, who's a brother who currently lives in Australia, tours around the world. His 10-year project is to end circumcision on our planet. Yeah. And it's going down in America. It's almost gone around the world except for America.
Right.
I'm proud to say my son was 26, was not circumcised.
Oh.
My son was 37, was not circumcised.
Cool.
And my father at 89, who I spoke about last night, not circumcised. But I was.
Yeah. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for engaging this afternoon and the authentic and accountable way, and the way you have managed to stay awake. I am deeply impressed and grateful. So thank you so much for your participation today. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, just one quick point here, because I've gone through this in another. Their attention, please.
Counterpoint.
I appreciate the comments about circumcision. I also have that wound because I wasn't circumcised, and then my foreskin adhered to my gland, and I had to be at age 6 or 7, and I have accessed that pain in my men's healing work, and I want us to be aware when we make these general broad statements that we have Jewish brothers who have a very different religious ritual understanding of that process. So let's be aware of the multicultural aspects when we get into these emotional things, because that's another one.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. All right, gentlemen, thank you.